All the political parties are starting to gather. Just give us a quick roundup. What is going on at Church Square?
Well, thank you very much, Eben. I'm really struggling to hear you once again because of all the loud music as well as the motorbikes, which have become synonymous with these kinds of marches. Of course, we're broadcasting live here from Church Square in Pretoria, where now there are thousands of supporters of the opposition political parties who've come here to march from Church Square to the Union buildings against President Jacob Zuma. Well, we're expecting them to leave here at about 12 o'clock, at about noon, where they will march on the Union buildings, of course escorted by the Tshwane Metro Police Department and police as well. We've spoken to quite a number of other political party leaders. Let's chat now to the African People's Convention's Themba Godi, the leader of the APC. Thank you very much for your time. You're also part of the thousands that are marching on the Union buildings here this morning. The message in particular I would be interested in from the APC.
Well, look, the message of the APC is that we demand better accountability from public leadership, and that in everything that we do, it is the interest of the poor that should be at the center. And for the past 2 decades, the poor in our country have not benefited adequately from this democracy. And with the ructions in the ruling party, it only means that the interests of the poor are going to take a back seat. And we felt as the APC, it is about time that we stand up and raise our voice to say, no, the poor need to stand up. Otherwise, this will merely be a fight amongst the elites at the expense of the poor. So we're here to say change must happen in governance, change must happen in policies, so that the poor can also say we're benefiting. For us, it's not about Pravin Gordhan. It's not only just about the junk status, because even before we were junk, even when Pravin Gordhan was there, the poor did not benefit adequately, and they need to stand up and stand up in their own name and in their own right to say enough is enough. We fought for this freedom, we are the majority, and our views and our interests matter.
Could your stance perhaps to take part in this march also be compelled, of course, by the latest developments in the country, where we see the economy itself taking a knock as a result of the ratings downgrades? You speak of the poor not benefiting. The poor are certainly going to bear the brunt of the current conditions that South Africa is facing economically. No,
indeed. You know, the APC has been a very matured and cautious in its approach without being reckless. And the way things are currently, certainly no one can stand and be a spectator. And you can't change anything by standing on the sidelines and pointing fingers. It is important to come in. For us, it's about mobilization, it's about raising awareness, because at the end of the day, any political change that is going to happen, it will happen as a result of the pressure that comes from the people. So mobilization, conscientization, these are processes. Today, we're taking the first steps in a long process to ensuring that whatever happens on the 18th, the interests of the people remain at the center. We don't want to exchange one elite for another and the poor remain spectators and remain in their poverty. We want to see changes that impact directly on the material conditions of the poor.
For the APC, do you think that is possible? We know that I've not heard you say as yet that part of that call is for President Jacob Zuma to step down. Do you think that South Africa can rescue itself from the situation that it currently finds it's in, with the divisions that we see within the ruling party, with President Jacob Zuma as head of state and president of the African National Congress?
Look, our approach is that the problem is not necessarily President Zuma alone, but his colleagues in cabinet are also failing, but also the ANC as a party, the policies that it has pursued so far, and the recklessness with which they are running the country is a cause for concern. But we have eternal faith in the masses of our people, that the people organized, mobilized, united can never be defeated, and whatever solutions that are going to come, they will be influenced in large measure by the extent to which our people are organized and their consciousness is raised.
I think, while you say you want to mobilize the masses, the responsibility doesn't, I guess, certainly lie with the masses themselves alone. It's those members of parliament who need to vote with opposition parties, and I guess there also needs to be a consensus coming from the governing party inside that it might believe that President Jacob Zuma is no longer the right person to lead the party, to lead the tripartite alliance. We've also seen the SACP and COSATU make their own calls with regards to President Jacob Zuma. So do you believe perhaps that the call by including people such as yourselves, the former president of the country, Thabo Mbeki, for those MPs to vote with their conscience, is that possible under the climate that we've seen in the African National Congress, where they've emerged with one voice to expressing a confidence in President Jacob Zuma?
Look, the question of what government does is not a product of conceptual understanding. In politics, it is the extent to which the masses are able to exert pressure to change and impact on our behavior as political leaders and even as MPs. Yes. Now, as for the ANC, in terms of what it can or cannot do, I think that is the million-dollar question. We may have our wish, but it will depend on the internal dynamics within that organization. Yes. But a public message does need to go to them to say, if you don't do the right thing, the power lies with the masses. Don't take the people for granted like you have done in the past 2 decades. I think that is the basic, that is the central theme of mobilization. Ensure that political leaders cannot take the masses for granted. They act understanding that for as long as they act in contrast with the masses, then they are going to pay the price come the second round of any election that is going to happen.
That's exactly the point I wanted to get to next. Do you foresee, just fast forward a bit, do you foresee perhaps the African National Congress taking a greater knock perhaps in the next election, judging by what we saw take place in the local government elections as a result of the shenanigans, if I may, that we've seen take place in the country, and also public displeasure within the governing party itself?
Look, Griselda, the sad thing for me as a freedom fighter is that the seeds for the destruction of the ANC were set in 1955 in Kliptown, because you have an organization that has no ideological coherence. It is a broad church. It is everything to everybody, and I think that is what has set the potential for the destruction of the ANC. And what we are seeing today, for me, is the outcome, of those choices they made then. If in the absence of any change in behavior, dramatic change in behavior from the ANC, I don't see how they can come back. But the question is, are they able to change? To change into what? To become what? When they don't have the requisite compass, the requisite ideological thesis within which to operate. I think they're done as far as I'm concerned. I don't see the trick, and unless of course they go rogue and rig elections.
There has been also massive support for President Jacob Zuma within his own political party. Do you think that these thousands of voices are enough to drown out the voices that are pro-President Jacob Zuma? Do you think this is going to be enough to send the message that you as opposition parties want to send to President Jacob Zuma and ultimately, I guess, the African National Congress?
Griselda, I would want us to frame it as not the voice of the opposition parties. We must see our people. It must be the voice of our people. And as you can see, it is African people who are here, whose main concern, these are people who come from Mikukus, these are people who come from townships, these are people who come from the villages, who don't have work, who don't have electricity, who don't have roads, who don't have water. You see, it is the ANC against the people, and it is for them to demonstrate that indeed they have their finger on the pulse of the thinking of the masses. But the way things are going, I'm not sure how, but I think we've reached a point of no return, and today we are taking the first steps in ensuring that the African self-determination is a reality.
Themba Godi, the leader of the African People's Convention, thank you very much for your time. Also lending his voice there as one of the leaders of the political parties that have decided to join this march to the union buildings. That again will get underway, say about 12 o'clock at about noon, but we're expecting many others, to come through here to the Church Square here in Pretoria as they move from here to the union buildings. And I think a jovial mood, I must say, in comparison to what we saw a bit earlier on, where the crowds were coming in quite slow, but there are thousands of people now who are expected to march through the streets of Pretoria to the union building. Some of those roads, of course, have been closed around this area to accommodate the thousands that will be marching to the seat of power. But it's business as usual again, as I indicated in our previous crossing, Urban. Business as usual for President Jacob Zuma. We know the ANC Youth League will be hosting a bash for the president in Kliptown a bit later on this afternoon. And certainly what we're expecting to see there, while on this side of town you're getting voices of condemnation and calling on President Jacob Zuma to resign, we're expecting at that birthday bash certainly voices that will reiterate that President Jacob Zuma is not going anywhere. He should be allowed to finish his term, and that he was democratically elected as the president of the country and should thus continue with his term until it comes to its end. So we'll certainly keep you updated with a whole lot more here from Church Square as thousands continue to pour in here for that march to the union buildings.
Yeah, thank you very much, Griselda Lewis. Griselda will be with us until midday, or throughout the rest of the programs, giving us, of course, updates from the capital. So what's happening, that's where the march will be starting, of course, if you don't know, that's Church